The US and India do not see eye to eye on everything, especially when it comes to Russia. But nevertheless, the two countries are getting closer to each other. And there is a simple reason for that. It's what brings people together, not what you both love, but what you both hate. Last week, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the White House. The US and India have noted recent steps to increase cooperation. Earlier this year, for example, they launched the Critical and Emerging Technologies Initiative to support joint work on technology development. Building on this, they also initiated the India-US Strategic Trade Dialogue and the US-India Defense Industrial Cooperation Roadmap. Together, these agreements should promote technology development and trade in critical areas such as semiconductors, space, telecom, quantum technologies, artificial intelligence, defense, biotechnology, and others, and accelerate technological cooperation and co-production in areas such as air combat and land mobile systems, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, munitions, and underwater. The U.S. benefits from these partnerships because these deals help the U.S. stop relying on China for many things. India, in turn, benefits from gaining access to U.S. technology that it might otherwise only dream of. It needs that technology to catch up with China. Micron Technology, one of the world's largest chip companies, has confirmed that it will invest up to $825 million to build a $2.75 billion chip assembly and testing facility in India. On the defense side, the US and India have agreed to jointly produce General Electric jet engines in India, needed to equip modern fighter jets. This is a huge change for Indian defense. The reason for this important deal is that only 4 countries in the world have the manufacturing technology and infrastructure necessary to produce high-end jet engines for fighter jets: the United States, Britain, France, and Russia. And among these 4 countries, American fighter jet engines are the best of the best, at least according to the Heritage Foundation. Given that few countries can produce high-end fighter jet engines, the technology for their production is carefully guarded and even partially transferred only to the closest allies, which now includes India. The engines in question have the same technology as the engines for the US Navy's Super Hornet, high-end but not cutting-edge. Nevertheless, it radically improves India's capabilities in both the Indian Ocean and the Himalayas, and could pave the way for building future U.S. aircraft. And speaking of the Himalayas, the U.S. has also agreed to provide about 30 high-altitude MQ-9B drones from General Atomics. This would be a mix of sea and sky guards that would help India track Chinese troops in the Himalayas. In return, the U.S. would gain access to Indian shipyards, where it could repair naval ships. This would greatly help the U.S. in the event of war with China. The Chinese Communist Party does not like these agreements, so the Chinese state media have warned India that it must reject the U.S. plans to contain China. Apparently, India did not listen. Both the US and India signed a bunch more deals to improve cooperation, but one of the most surprising deals was India's agreement to join Artemis Accords, an American-led program to return to the moon and explore Mars. India has agreed to sign Artemis Accords to join 26 other countries in the US-led lunar exploration project. According to a researcher at the Strategic and Defense Studies Board, this is a very big deal because it is a general departure from the way India has handled international space treaties and negotiations. India usually prefers legally binding treaties to regulate both civilian and military space activities, but the Artemis Agreement is not a legally binding treaty, or even a treaty. Rather, it is a set of NASA principles that countries can follow in exploring the moon. It is the U.S. way of allowing resource extraction and creating security zones while circumventing the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which states outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, shall not be subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty, use, or occupation, or any other means. India definitely does not want to be left behind in the space race with the United States and China, and it is not just for prestige. India's national security depends on it, so India's space priorities are changing accordingly. Space supremacy plays a huge role in geopolitics these days. China knows this, which is why it is investing a lot of money and resources in developing its own space programs, such as the plan to put Chinese astronauts on the moon by 2030. In addition, China is also developing new technologies, experimenting with biotechnology, high-energy beams, and even artificial intelligence in space. To counter China, India is developing its private sector to encourage ventures like SpaceX and plans to launch its own space station by 2030. But India's space capabilities are very limited compared to China. As of March 2020, China owned 13.6% of all satellites in Earth orbit, while India owned 2.3%. That's why it needs the support of the US and other Quartet members. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel and write your opinion in the comments.